if HUD money was in the House bill. We'll talk about that.
Remember to use your microphones because our minute taker uses the stream to do the minutes.
We're all set?
Yes.
All right. So good morning. We're going to call the meeting of the Ithaca Urban Renewal Agency to order at 9:06 a.m. Do we have any changes, any additions to our agenda?
No, none.
Okay. Anyone online for public comments?
There are no public comments.
Okay. So the first order of business is to review our meeting minutes from our April 25th meeting. They're in our agenda package starting on page 2. I will move those minutes. Do we have a second? I think Siobhan's hands were up. Oh, Cheyenne, I'm going to start doing that again. Siobhan, I apologize in advance.
There you go.
All right, we have a second from Cheyenne. Any changes to the agenda? Any corrections? All right, seeing none, all in favor, accepting? It's unanimous. Okay. Next order of business is a report from the Neighborhood Investment Committee. We have one item. The committee has a resolution where I am nominated and was elected as vice chairperson of the committee. The committee is presenting for the board's vote the nomination of Cheyenne Osterich as chair of the committee. Any discussion? First, let me say I will move that resolution. Do I have a second? All right, second by Siobhan. Any discussion? All right, all in favor? I want to thank Cheyenne for stepping forward to become chairperson. And I know, excuse me, given that you are about to go back to teaching, this is an extra load, but definitely appreciate it. Next order, the chairperson's report. The only thing I'll report is that the committee is, as we will be discussing in a little bit, the committee will be changing its meeting times from Friday mornings at 8:30 on the second Friday of the month to the second Thursday of the month at 9 a.m. All right, and again, that's to meet Cheyenne's needs as her schedule at work is changing. But other than that, I should also mention one of our members, Brian Toy, who served for approximately a year, I think, a little bit more than a year, is moving out of state. So we were sad to see him go. Brian worked as a planner for, I guess, Chemung County, not Chemung, Steuben County, and its surrounding counties. And he brought a lot to the committee with experience and was really enthusiastic member of the committee. So we want to thank him for his service. Okay. Economic Development Committee is next on our agenda.
Yeah. So we similarly had our annual appointment conversation, and we appointed Leslie as the vice president or vice chair of the Economic Development Committee. And we have a resolution for me to be the chair of the Economic Development Committee. So that is the resolution that is in our agenda packet for the day.
All right. I will move that. Okay. Any discussion? All right, all in favor of appointing Siobhan? Unanimous. Thank you, Siobhan.
Thank you. The other thing that I'll mention that we discussed at our meeting is we had a presentation from the Director of Workforce Innovation for the Ithaca Area Economic Development Workforce Initiative Program, and she spoke extensively about their direct-to-work apprenticeship program and their new program that they're launching in the trades. So they've previously done manufacturing-based apprenticeships in the area, and now they're expanding. I don't remember the name of that second program, Nels.
Direct to work is the construction trades and Oh, wait, no, maybe it's not. You know, the first one was the manufacturing focused program, and the second one is the building trades program, co-sponsored by like 9, 10, 11 different unions in the
Yeah,
area they're working
think
with.
11 of the 13 trade unions.
Was there, I'm sorry, go
No,
ahead.
but you go ahead.
Okay. Was there a mention of the program reaching out to, I'm thinking of many of the agencies that we work with, some of whom are funded in the 2026 action plan. I wonder if was there a mention of collaboration or at least outreach to those agencies?
That did come up in the discussion at the committee meeting, and one of the programs did have a person in attendance from
Yeah,
GIAC.
both GIAC and Historic Ithaca had representatives attending to watch the presentation. And Danny Swabo has communicated with both of them directly already. So they're communicating. I think the Ithaca area, IEATC programs are really focused on meeting the needs of the employers as a primary source. And so there's a kind of an enrollment process where they have a chance to select those who think are going to be the best fit for the program and able to meet the needs of that employer and satisfy those as well as match up with their own interests. So they're I wouldn't say they're creaming off the people, but they're not at a place where they can work with people who are just entering the workforce for the very first time. It's not probably the right fit for most people. We wanted to continue some discussions. I'll continue discussions with her about where is there opportunity for collaboration. But in some ways, the programs that we've been funding for, at least for Historic Ithaca and maybe the GIAC program, are a little bit more of entry, bringing people forward to the point where if they exhibit an interest in the manufacturing of the trades, it might be a good way to have them move towards that program. Then we actually even explored a little bit, could we count as a job placement if they go through one of the IURA supported programs and then, 6 months later, get a job placement through their program. And we think that could potentially work. It's not a duplication of benefit kind of question when we report to HUD on the outcome. So that's one possibility to look at. But I think there needs to be more communication, and it's a robust program where they've been very successful bringing in lots of resources. My sense is their costs per beneficiary, because they have a lot more involvement and do pay stipends, is higher than our cost, which is about $10,000 per person who is placed in a job. So it's a resource intensive program that has the potential to scale up.
Yeah, well, I hope so. And it's good to know that they are open to collaboration. I mean, I think of Black Hands Universal, for example, who is working, actually doing some of the same work that this program is doing, though probably with people, again, who might not qualify for this newer program, but would be a good feeder into this program.
I think I may have been a little bit unfair to say they were creamy, because they do work hard to meet people where they're at. But if a manufacturer who's doing production work for the military has, certain standards in terms of their record, then they want to bring that forward up front and not have that be an obstacle, down the road. So there is a lot of effort to try to bring resources to them and get people to the point where their skill set would be attractive to an employer. They said the next big challenge is transportation to and from work, particularly if it's not the traditional, daytime work, if it's a second shift or something like that.
Great.
I'm sorry, Siobhan, can you just say, I mean, I didn't want to interrupt that conversation, but the beginning of it, I kind of missed like what we're talking about at the beginning.
Yeah, we had a presentation from the Ithaca Area Development Workforce Training Initiative. So they run 2 programs, and they just came to speak with us about what that looks like, to give us a better idea of what sort of career training pathway programs exist in the county.
How do people who might be interested get connected to those training programs?
They have
I-
an application process.
Yes, you can go to the well, how come I get it?
A lot of letters.
Area Economic
You just-
Development website.
What area?
Economic development.
And I think Workforce New York also has a direct link to this program as well. So Workforce is kind of the place where you kind of start out if you're trying to navigate, job training opportunities.
Workforce.
New York, yeah, and they have a link to this program as well. They all start with direct to, I think, direct
Yeah,
to work,
direct to work.
So
And
the Ithaca Area Development, IAD.
IEAD, Ithaca Area, IAED, Ithaca Area Economic Development, sorry.
And it's their workforce initiative programs.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they hired a firm to help them market, figure out the best way to market to get to the clientele. For the manufacturing program, they had a reasonably good response, but it was, I think they said there were like 15 respondents, and in the program, they ended up with like something like 12. When they did the more detailed marketing for the trades program, they had over 150 people exhibit interest in it. Now, they didn't all follow through, but they ended up with a far higher number of people of demand than they had capacity. But they did note that a good number of those people who responded to the trades program were from outside of the city of Ithaca and actually outside of Tompkins County, interesting enough. So they wanted to keep a focus on local population for the program, but recognizing that it strengthens the economy to have even regional workers, in these trades where there's a really lack of supply or lack of contractors and workers. So the Tompkins County IDA has a criteria for local workforce participation when they provide incentives such as tax abatements. And they define local as anybody who resides in Tompkins County or one of the adjacent counties. So there is this, trade unions also have various geographic categories that don't always match up with just Tompkins County. I think that might be one reason why there was a little wider geographic interest in the trades program.
Yeah, I was going to ask that question about the geographic area, but I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just managing the acronyms here. Ithaca Development, IDA, Ithaca Development Agency, or
Ithaca Economic,
so it's
Ithaca
still
area,
You mentioned
Okay.
the IDA.
yeah, and then I mentioned the Tompkins County Ithaca Industrial Development Agency has the local labor participation policy embedded into their incentive program.
and those phrases are different than Ithaca Area Development Workforce.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ithaca Area Economic Development has the career training programs.
Okay. Thank you.
well, one of the things I hope is that, again, going back to outreach, that it could be easy if you have a lot of folks approaching you, particularly if it's Tompkins and the 6 contiguous counties, it can be easy to kind of forget about outreach. And so you miss many of the populations who are local who could and want, I think, to work, want that pathway to work, especially in a program like this that seems to be very well connected to the trade unions and the manufacturers. And so I hope that they will continue with the outreach, again, especially to some of the agencies that we've been working with over the years. And have been, one of the reasons we work with a lot of these agencies is they're working with the most vulnerable populations in our area. And so if we could connect the two and have a real commitment from the IAED, I think that would be, in my mind, preferable. Okay, any further discussion? Any other items from the ED committee?
That was all we discussed.
All right. Thank you, Siobhan. Okay, moving on to new business. We had discussed last meeting, or via email, changing our meeting date to the fourth Thursday at 9 a.m., beginning with our our August meeting. Nels, I think we heard from everyone over email or at our meetings that folks were available.
Yeah, Donna had no objections.
Just not Rob.
I don't think I heard an actual response from Rob, but I didn't hear an objection. So
Okay.
Does he work on Thursdays?
his schedule has been primarily focused on Wednesdays prior to council meetings, and Fridays this last year. So that was his focus. He is available, often. He's also often available for special meetings because he's attending lots of different meetings throughout the week. If we have an agreement here, I will follow up with him to confirm that it works for his schedule or can work for his schedule starting later.
Okay.
You think that's preferable than just waiting to get an affirmative from him first and then bring it back?
Well, it doesn't require a resolution, and we've got, it's just a matter of setting internal policy here by the agency. So I think it makes sense to say this is our default unless we hear that there's a problem. Because he didn't raise a concern about it when it was raised, but he also didn't weigh in and
Right.
affirm either.
All right. Well, let's, since we've heard from everyone but Rob, why don't we follow that, and then hopefully it's not a conflict for him, and so we'll know it.
I do know that the 9 a.m. works better than an 8:30 a.m. for him, so that's 1+2.
All right. So I guess we're saying tentatively, we'll be moving our meeting to Thursdays, fourth Thursday at 9 a.m., starting in August. Okay. Review of our grant and loan and lease reports.
Yes, you should have the grant summary, the loan and lease reports as well. Things seem to be running fairly well with most programs. We don't see a lot of major issues. We have a couple of no's on there, but these are not new no's in terms of projects that are on schedule. And again, the St. John's Community Center Sober Living Reintegration Project, they have expended their funds and made their improvements. It's a matter of them reporting the number of beneficiaries that they said were going to be provided, and they're working through some building code issues to make sure they have authority for the full, I think, 11 bedrooms that they have. It's historically authorized at 9 bedrooms. They're trying to get it authorized for 11. But last I knew, we had 4 beneficiaries reported, and we were trying to get that number up to at least 8 beneficiaries. They have to get state approval for people to enter into their state licensed facility. For people coming back out of a more, they're reintegrating out of alcohol or substance abuse programs back into the community. So that's why that's a no. It's not a spend down issue, which is a normal thing we talk about, or delay in completing the project. We are waiting for OAR to complete their documentation to enter into an agreement. We need a resolution, and we asked for other information from them. So we're still waiting on that from last I heard, which is getting to be a bit of a delay for that. And then the reason why we have the no for the beacon is because that Inland Island project was canceled. Once we get the 2025 projects up on this list, that money has been earmarked for some of those activities in 2025. But just for our accountant to track it, it's a lot easier to keep it alive here until we formally transfer those funds to a new program, a new project.
There's a question about St. John's, actually 2 questions.
Mm-hmm.
So even though their primary operation here in the county ceased, which was the shelter, they anticipate continuing to run this facility?
That's right. They also have some continuum of care funded projects, scattered site permanent supportive housing projects, and they got some additional funding in this last round. So they'll have maybe total of 3 different apartments scattered throughout the community where they'll be supporting people who were formerly homeless. in those units. My understanding is they have an interest in expanding their services in the county. They're not moving out of the area. It just didn't work out from their perspective in terms of continuing to operate the shelter.
And the second question has to do with when they renovated the residence, they changed it from 9 bedrooms to 11,
Yeah.
and that was without building department support, or?
Well,
or
they
no?
haven't I mean, it was a group home before.
Right.
So there was already kind of a group home setting there. I think it's got 2 kitchens. And they got permission for an 11-bedroom facility from the state in terms of the maximum number they can have under their program. I don't know if it required I think there were some bedrooms that were large that could accommodate 2 beds, and they wanted to make them individual bedroom units. So it was like internal reconfiguration is what it was. But there's a zoning issue and there's potential a building code issue when you go from a project that already, this is one of the situations where the parking requirements have set some limitations on the occupancy. And so they're at a cap already based on their off-street parking requirements. From a zoning perspective, we think that issue's been resolved because a group home is treated differently than a multifamily apartment building. And then there is the fire code standards, which also are tied in to the number of bedrooms. And I think they still have to work through that issue. So there's nothing stopping them from getting up to the 8 that we're looking for as a minimum count. But there are some issues they're working through to get to their 11-bedroom count that they want planned for. There might be some nuances that Anissa could tell you. She's traveling right now, so I don't have every last detail, but we've been working with Rich Bennett to try to work through those issues, and Megan Wilson through our zoning office is communicating with them like 3 or 4 times last week about the issues. So they're trying to work them out.
I was just gonna ask, so in all of that, are there any residents there?
Yes, there are 4, I think, that are currently residing there. It did take a while to bring those first 4 in. It wasn't immediate when they finished the completion. It did take several months. And I think there was a staffing issue because the state requires a minimum staffing level. So they have to have sufficient staff on site before they can bring in residents or a certain number of residents. The bottom line issue, though, at the very bottom of our CDBG spend down is we're not at our 1.5 maximum ratio. We have another month or 2 to do that. And we do have some significant spend downs that are not recognized in this April report, but I don't think we're going to get to 1.5, especially again, because that sidewalk project, Cecil Ballone's $160,000, and that's not going to be able to be processed, even though it's under contract till after June. And then the homeowner rehab program from INHS, there's 2 years of prior year funding on that. That is mostly still unspent. They're working through issues and have a couple projects that are moving forward. So we'll see some spend down, but it's not going to be sufficient by June 1st or to show that it's been expended by then. So we'll work with HUD on that issue, and we have a pretty good story that things are in the pipeline. It'll work out, but we're not probably going to meet that snapshot test. And better news on the loans and leases, though, because our loans are all current and leases are reasonably good. We have a couple that are a little bit late in payment, but All Pros past due loan repayment has been received now. 7th Art, we just communicated with them on their quarterly administrative fee. They're current on the rent, but the quarterly administrative fee is getting processed today. And then Southside, I sent a notice to them. They have 1 month's payment due on their former rib site that they still need to make payment on. So that's 1 month, that lease has expired now. And the city will be taking over that property for their pump station project.
All right. Thank you, Nels. All right. In terms of reports, staff report.
Yeah, I wanted to bring forward a little bit of information here with your spreadsheet. You did get notice of our actual 2025 allocation of home and CDBG funds. Happily, it was higher than our anticipated amount. So you can see at the very bottom corner, we're comparing the anticipated to actual. It's about $59,000 more than we anticipated. That's basically about where our funding was last year. So we were a little conservative in thinking we were going to have some reductions, and in fact, we didn't receive reductions from our prior year. It was a continuing resolution budget that the federal government adopted, so that makes sense that it would be similar to what last year's funding was, but usually there are more communities that enter into the program every year as our populations increase, and we're worried about that. So on this chart on the left-hand side is what was approved for the projects, showing some of them that were scaled back. On the right-hand side is following the IRA's resolution of what do we do in the happy situation where we have more money than what was anticipated. It basically boils down to bringing those who are scaled down back up on an equal percentage basis as much as possible. So you can see in the yellow boxes that those are the projects that had adjustments in either the home or CDBG. We brought several projects back up to full funding, especially in the housing category. I think we were able to get the housing scholarship program up to full funding and the security deposit assistance program up to full funding. And that actually left a pretty sizable increase for the 209 West State Street project because that was the one remaining home project that got scaled. And then you can see the other projects, public service category, there were a lot of projects that were able to be increased. In that category, some of them didn't have any change because they were already at their full funding request. So you can see that we're going to do one more check on this to make sure the numbers work right, but these were likely to be the numbers that are get logged into the action plan submitted to HUD. If the Common Council approves the action plan. So that's the next segue is that the council reviewed or held a public hearing on the action plan in, what is it, May 12th or something, May 14th, and have voted unanimously to bring it forward to the June 4th meeting where they will then have a formal vote on it. We still have an open public comment period time, so there may be some comments that are received that we'd want to forward to the council, but there have been no public comments or any critical public comments received to date on that. So things are moving in a good fashion with that, and we expect to be able to submit by June 16th, and then HUD would have 45 days to review and approve the action plan, so we could be perhaps up and running in August. Typically, we don't get formal notice till September, October, though.
Nels, when there was did you say sort of public hearing through Common Council?
Yes.
Does that mean all these folks have to come back again to talk to Common Council?
No, there's a two-part requirement for public hearings. One is the public hearing during development of the action plan, which is that kind of elongated public hearing process before the IRA, and then there is a public hearing requirement after the draft action plan is prepared for people to respond to that. And so there's no requirement for anybody to come and any of the grantees to come and attend. They were notified of the public hearing date, and I don't think any attended in person. There might have been some online who watched. There was no comments made at the public hearing.
Okay, thanks.
Nels, I think you said that HUD has 45 days to comment. Is that comments on the plan, or is there an opportunity during those 45 days for them to make any changes to the funding?
I should say it's 45 days to approve the proposed action plan. They can raise issues, particularly because it's not just this chart, it's the narrative that goes along with it that's submitted. And they look at how did we consult with other players? What was the outreach efforts? How does this action plan address homeless needs or other community development needs? So they have commented in the past on some of those issues. One that comes up, was coming up was is there a better way to provide outreach other than legal notices in the newspaper, which is kind of we're mandated to do that as a minimum, but we also do go further and do other things. And they very much like the fact that Anissa goes to the Human Services Coalition and gets it on their listserv and attends a variety of different meetings in the community to let people know about the opportunity and then also about the proposed action plan. But
Okay.
generally, the rules are that they have 45 days to approve. If they raise an issue in that 45-day period, it may extend that time period out. But generally speaking, they don't approve prior to 45 days. They kind of let it the clock run, I guess.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't expect any notice fewer than 45 days from the date of our submission.
All right. But it sounds like no opportunity then for them to change the funding.
Oh, the dollar amount?
Right.
Correct. That's very unlikely unless there was some sort of nationwide change in the funding pattern, because the allocation is made by the central office to all the 1,200 entitlement communities. And that formula is pretty well locked in, right? As you see with the home funding to the penny. So,
Okay, great.
I had one other item here. What do I have here? Just want to let you know that I have my vacation plan in June, so I'm going to miss the June IRA meeting. Anissa will be here. So I leave after the Economic Development Committee meeting in June and have 2 weeks off and back basically right before the 4th of July. So that's my schedule. But we'll have full staff coverage to make sure to support the IRA. It is kind of a quiet period for the agency in some respects because we're kind of getting the action plan submitted, waiting for responses, and the programs for 2024 are all under contract now, but they're kind of early in their stages of implementation.
So we may not have that many agenda items.
That's correct. It's a possibility.
All right. I think we have concluded our business unless there's anything else.
Oh, I just wanted to ask, I didn't do it myself, so I'm not presuming, but did anybody look at yesterday's news? To see, I know there's gonna be a lot of changes between the House bill and the Senate bill, but did you see anything bad or good? I mean, I don't mean in general.
I didn't see anything specific to CDBG and home in
Yeah.
that bill, I guess is
Yeah,
maybe all I can see.
yeah,
We will be tracking it and
Yeah.
as well as a lot of advocacy organizations that we linked or we're linked into to see what the impacts are. I do know that the changes in the general economy and changes in the federal government's policies has had a pretty dramatic impact on the low-income housing tax credit program. There is partially some funding in this bill I think, or a separate bill that's progressing to expand the program somewhat. But we're hearing that the rate of tax credits, so, the way the tax credits work, an organization like INHS gets an allocation of tax credits, then they kind of basically syndicate those and sell those to people who can use the tax credits. That becomes equity into the project. Typically, in the good days, they were at 95 cents on the dollar. Now they've moved more into like the 88 cents on the dollar. We've just heard recently that they're as low as 80 cents on the dollar right now, which means that for every dollar of credit, they're only getting 80 cents back to invest in the program, which makes it harder to make the tax credit programs function. They need more tax credits for the same size project. The reading is that entities that are acquiring the tax credits feel that they no longer need the Community Reinvestment Act benefits of the tax credit program. And I don't know if that's a matter of a less focus on enforcement of CRA or whether they have built up additional CRA credits and they don't have the tax liability that they would have had in prior years. I'm not exactly sure, but the outcome is that not-for-profit housing developers are scrambling once again to figure out how to finance their projects.
and I had also read about even in this current, like that there was efforts either in this current period or in the next budget around big reductions in the housing choice voucher flow. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, well, I've certainly been hearing that and we know that the local agencies that allocate housing choice vouchers have stopped issuing any vouchers and if somebody returns a voucher in, they're not reissuing it to a new party because they want to make sure they have sufficient resources to honor the vouchers they have. So that means that when somebody is experiencing homelessness and trying to move out of the shelter, they don't have access to that housing choice voucher resource that has been typically available. Challenging to find, necessarily, because we already had heard that once you get a voucher, that doesn't mean you have housing. You got to go find a unit that will accept that voucher level amount, and that's challenging. But now that those programs are not accepting any new applicants at the moment, which is a real log jam in the process of moving people from homelessness into housing or to allow people to move into better housing than they're experiencing.
And is that move out of uncertainty or because they haven't actually received cuts or so they're just prepping for like people not getting
The
stuck
case-
in an
Yeah,
apartment
we have
that they
two
can't?
providers. One is Ithaca Housing Authority and the other is Tompkins County TCA. TCA gets their allocation from New York State, and New York State said, no new funding, put a limit. So they're probably reading the tea leaves and saying, we want to make sure we have resources for those who are currently in the program. My understanding from IHA is that they stopped. Again, I don't know whether it was they actually don't have resources coming in or it's out of caution, again, to make sure they can serve their current clients. Don't know the answer to that one, but it's a concern out of the president's proposed budget had significant cuts in the program. And so,
Yeah, that's what I had seen.
yeah.
So just for and I know this is one of those things when we don't have agenda items, we can go on. So I just I'd follow up. So the funding that comes from New York State to TCA, that is also essentially from HUD,
Correct.
right? It just refunneled. Some of it comes from New York State and some goes directly to IHA.
I think it goes to New York State, and New York State then sub-grants it to IHA.
Oh, so they're both from New York.
No. Oh,
From-
yeah, they're both original funding sources are from federal government, is my understanding.
Okay.
It's a little bit like the entitlement grant program. Ithaca gets a direct grant for CDBG, but New York State also gets a direct grant for CDBG to cover the remainder of the state that's not entitlement. So there's a little bit of a similar model here, I think, with housing choice vouchers.
Thanks.
Anything else? Okay. All right. So we'll make a motion to adjourn our May meeting at 9:44 a.m. I think we set a record. Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.